Good evening, everyone. Time for another silver update. This is a 30-minute silver chart provided by netdania.com. You can click on the link below. And I'm highlighting the current trend line that I've been showing for a number of days now. You can see with the lower rising trend line and the upper trend line that we're reaching a point of decision where we're probably either going to break dramatically to the upside or the downside. Again, the MACD is rising while the trend line is falling. You can see we're just at the zero line. We've just crossed above the zero line. Certainly not in a decisive manner, but we are rising just with the action tonight. And so within the next couple of days, we're going to see a resolution either to the upside or the downside on this. And I expect that we'll probably run a decent amount when we get that resolution, perhaps $1 or $2 one way or the other. So if we resolve it to the downside, we may get a test of the $30, which is really a key number that a lot of people have talked about, or we may come up and test this $33. So the 32.50 line is going to be key. As we go out, that's going to fall, but right now we're looking at about 32.50 is going to be the price that if we break above that, then we've got a resolution to the upside. The downside is going to be down around 31.60, 31.50. If we break through that, we're probably going to have a significant resolution to the downside. So we just need to keep an eye on that. I wanted to give a big shout out to David Morgan, who put out a fantastic video today. He had asked me a couple weeks ago about using my video, and of course I said that's fine, and I just wasn't sure what he was going to do, but he put out a blockbuster silver video, and I'm not sure if it's going to go viral. Certainly it will be viral in the silver and gold communities, and hopefully even in the financial communities. You can see when we look at it here, there's 279 likes already. It's stuck at the 301 counter. That's real typical for YouTube just because of the metrics that they use to do counting. So that will release and we'll see what that number goes to. But with the 279 likes, that's a very large number. One dislike, I guess that was Ben Bernanke. But I encourage you to watch this video. He really lays out the story for silver, and it's just fantastic. In my opinion, the silver community is really what I would call a big tent, and in my opinion, there's plenty of room in that tent. There's more and more people in it. There's SGT Bull has an excellent channel, covers the series Silver Story all the time. There's Chris Dwayne with his Truth Never Told series, and there's Silver Doctors, Turd Ferguson, and Carrie Lutz is covering these fairly often. So it's a growing tent in my opinion, and it's not at all, in my opinion, a zero-sum game. I think when people promote each other and promote the silver story, that we just have that much bigger of a chance to make this story grow. Now, if you remember yesterday on my Silver Doctors story where I covered the post talking about the 100 million ounce key number for silver, and that was a number that was reached by the Hunts and Warren Buffett and the SLV and others, and that was a big number that he was pointing out that seems to be a number that draws attention. Also mentioned Eric Sprott, who is going to be approaching that number very soon. So it's a key number for the accumulation of silver, and the issue of the big money coming into silver, that's going to be the key issue, because of course until the big investors get in there, we're probably not going to see a significant move. Now, as I pointed out in my Office series, where I said that silver needs to go up the key idea there was that silver is just at such a low price right now relative to the amount of investment monies that are out there that it's impossible for the large investor to get involved in this market. Now, they can get involved in the paper market, but as we've seen through various shenanigans in the European nations and in the United States with various bankruptcies and bond restructurings and things like that, the paper really isn't reliable. So I'm going to assume that these people need to get a percentage of their portfolios in physical silver. So let's look at the story of the day, and I'm going to try to calculate what that number would be. So the first thing I want to look at is the list of billionaires. If you go to Wikipedia, you've got a recent list compiled by Forbes, which is the Forbes list of billionaires, and you can see that we've got this year a total of 1,226 billionaires in the world. Their combined net worth is roughly $4.6 trillion. So we're going to use that figure, and then the other figure we're going to use is the list of millionaires. That's a much larger number. The 2008 estimate was 10 million worldwide who are classified as US dollar millionaires. So if you do the math, 10 million times the million is going to be another $10 trillion. So if we take our $5 trillion, we'll round up, from our billionaires, and our $10 trillion from our millionaires, and of course there's going to be some crossover, so these are rough estimates, but we come up with a figure of roughly $15 trillion. So we want to do the math on that real quick. We want to take $15 trillion, and what we're looking for is what percentage of that $15 trillion, in other words, what percentage of the assets of all of these investors would be in precious metals. Now, if you go and listen to the Wall Street pundits and the Wall Street observers and the Wall Street advisors and most of the people who are very anti-gold and silver, these are not precious metal people. Most of them are anti-precious metal people. But they will tell you, if you listen to them closely, they will tell you that everyone should have roughly 10% as a safety net, as an inflation hedge or perhaps a deflation hedge. But they'll generally cite the figure of 10%. So we want to start off by dividing this number by 10, and that's going to be the recommended amount that should be in precious metals. So you can see we have $1.5 trillion, and the number that they're going to recommend, I think I may have the zeros wrong here, the number that they're going to recommend for silver and gold is 10%. We're just going to assume that half of that is going to be silver, so we're going to divide by 2. And actually, I had that right. So that's going to equal $750 billion. $750 billion is going to be the standard Wall Street recommendation for how much money you should have in silver. So let's start off by using the current silver price, and we're going to say it's $32. So let's divide by $32 that amount of money that should go towards silver, just from the billionaires and the millionaires, and you can see we end up with 23 billion ounces of silver. Now, we know that the amount of silver available, and I'm assuming that these investors are smart enough to know that paper silver and paper gold are not real silver and gold, so we're hoping that they understand that point and that they're going to direct those monies towards the physical as opposed to the paper shenanigans, whether it's ETFs or COMEX contracts, etc. So obviously there isn't 23 billion ounces of silver out there for these investors to invest in. So we want to figure out how much there actually is, and remember they're going to be competing with the ordinary small-time investor for these amounts of silver as well. So the first thing we want to do is probably divide by 1 billion, because I'm going to assume that that is probably what's out there, although that's probably not deliverable right now, but with a price rising, that number would change. So let's just go with a rough figure of 1 billion and divide by that. And that's going to give us 23 times. In other words, we're going to have a 23-fold price move for those investors to be able to gobble up that 1 billion ounces of silver. Now, we know that that's not what's available every year. The estimates vary between 800 million to a billion ounces mined per year, but almost 800 million is taken by industry, and we're going to assume they're not going to back off. So if they don't, then they're probably going to end up competing as bidders for the silver that's left over. But generally, there's about 250 million ounces of silver left over. So the 1 billion figure would take at least 4 years to accumulate. So that's a fair figure, I think. So let's just say that that 23 figure is accurate, and the current price is 32. So we're talking about a price of about $736 for silver for these millionaires and billionaires to actually hold 5% of their net worth in physical silver. Now, there's a lot of other multipliers that are involved here. We could multiply by 2 or so to get back to historical ratios. That would bring us to about 1,500. We could also assume that it's much rarer than 1 billion available deliverable. We could just do the 250, so that would be a factor of 4. So we're talking about a price of 750 roughly, or a price of 1,500, or a price of 3,000. So those are going to be our prices that we're looking at, just assuming that the millionaires and billionaires of this world decide to put 5% of their net assets into physical silver. We would need to see a price of $750 or $1,500 or $3,000 an ounce of silver for that to be the case. So obviously, with a price of $32 today, none of these people are involved in this market. And if that's the case, what is going to happen if they do become involved in this market? Now, you remember that Silver Doctors pointed out that the Buffett involvement, it was back here in 1998. Now, I think if we remove the line, the freehand, we can actually go back and look at that move. And you can see this was a move of Warren Buffett accumulating just over 100 million ounces of silver. And you can see the price move was from the low, and we don't know when this accumulation began, but you can see a move from low to high. We went from about $4.25 to about almost $8. So the price nearly doubled. Just for round numbers, we'll say that that doubled the price. So that was $100 million ounce accumulation, and my speculation is that we would expect to see a billion ounce accumulation for all of these people to get 5%, and that's going to be a tenfold move from this move, and you can see that the price doubled. So using that, we come up with about the same number, in that the price would need to double and then move tenfold, and that's going to give us 64 times 10, 640. So that's another confirmation that we're looking at about a $700 price for silver for these people to get involved. So that's very encouraging, and obviously these people haven't got involved yet, but my prediction is at some point in time they will get involved with these types of stories coming out, with stalwarts and legends in the silver community like David Morgan pointing out that silver is the Achilles heel of the paper fiat banking system. Hopefully more and more of these millionaires and billionaires will get the message and begin to accumulate. And at that point, we will expect to see an explosion in price, which will take us rapidly above the $50 and $100 and be moving towards 700 or even quadruple digits on the silver price. And we'll talk to you next time.